There's been some exciting news coming out of Yellowstone National Park lately. Experts have just discovered something about the park's future using maps that were created 85 years ago. But what did they find? Did they uncover a new fault line, or maybe they found evidence of a potential supervolcano eruption? Well, let's take a closer look at what's really going on. It's me, and you're watching this channel. Join with me for an exploration of the incredible science behind some of the most extreme environments on Earth. And today we're taking a trip to Yellowstone National Park to crack the code of its cryptic maps. Yellowstone is famous for being home to the largest active supervolcano on Earth. And because of this, there has been a lot of interest in understanding how it behaves, and whether or not it will blow again. Part of the work involved in trying to understand what's going on beneath Yellowstone is done by geologists who study what's happening above ground. This is because features on the surface can tell us a lot about what's happening below. For example, the shape of the land itself can tell us where magma is pushing up from underneath. Hot springs and geysers are also great indicators of what's happening below, since they form when groundwater is heated by the magma chamber. By studying these features, scientists can help us predict when the volcano might erupt. And while predicting eruptions is difficult, studying these features does allow scientists to rule out unlikely theories and narrow down the possibilities. But unfortunately, it's not always easy to see these features, since they're often covered in snow and ice for half the year. That's why it was such a big deal when, in the winter of 1937, the National Park Service decided to conduct their first aerial survey of the park. The goal was to map every single hot spring and other thermal feature in the park so that it could be easily monitored through the winter months. And as you can probably imagine, seeing all of these features laid out in a single view was a huge help to researchers. In fact, it helped them so much that over the next 20 years, the National Park Service conducted aerial surveys every single winter. Altogether, the team took hundreds of photographs, which were then compiled into a series of detailed maps. These maps have now become some of the most important records of the park's geothermal features. And while they proved useful for monitoring features throughout the winter, they also revealed something else. When the photographs were taken, the pilots flew directly over each feature. But the camera couldn't distinguish between a hot spring pool that was completely frozen over and one that had snow piled up around it, but still had open water. So some of the pools were labeled as being frozen when they weren't, and conversely, others were labeled as being open when they were actually frozen. This isn't the end of the story, though, because even though these features were mislabeled on the 1937 map, subsequent overflights in later years allowed scientists to easily identify which ones were frozen and which ones were not. And this led to a realization that some of the pools that were initially identified as new discoveries were actually just remelted versions of the same pool that had previously been labeled as frozen. To make matters more confusing, there were also cases where pools that were labeled as having melted were actually still frozen, and some of those were subsequently labeled as brand new pools, when in reality they were simply the same pools as before. So needless to say, it was a bit of a mess. But this is where things get interesting. In a paper published this past March, a group of scientists used the 1937 map as a baseline to analyze changes in the park's hydrothermal features. They focused specifically on one area of the upper geyser basin known as the Black Sand Basin. Here they found 36 features that were labeled as new. These would include both newly formed features that hadn't been seen before, and features that were open during the survey in 1937, but had since frozen over. They then compared this data with records of seismic activity in the area. Seismic activity in this region of the park was fairly sparse from 1937 until the mid-1980s, when the rate of earthquakes began to increase dramatically. Since then, the number of earthquakes has continued to rise, and the area is now the most seismically active region in North America. So to the researchers' surprise, they found that most of the newly formed features didn't match up with the increased seismic activity. In fact, only 3 of the 36 features matched up with earthquakes larger than a magnitude 3.0. Instead, they found that many of these features matched up with small increases in elevation. And this is significant because it suggests that these features aren't linked to tectonic activity at all, but rather they are instead being caused by magma pushing up from below. As magma pushes up toward the surface, it causes the ground above it to dome upwards. As the pressure increases, eventually the overlying rock breaks and the magma erupts as a geyser. And this may explain why we've seen more geysers in the park in recent years. Between 1985 and 2020, 20 new geysers formed in Yellowstone, many of them located in this same region of the park. The researchers think that melting permafrost may have also played a role in the apparent increase in new features. It's likely that warmer temperatures allowed some of the features that were covered in snow and ice to become visible in later surveys. This would explain why many of the features labeled as new in the 1980s and later actually matched up with locations of small earthquakes. That's because as the permafrost melted, it exposed magma chambers that had previously been hidden. This then led to small earthquakes, followed by the formation of new geysers and hot springs. By using this data, scientists hope to better understand what's happening beneath the surface of Yellowstone, and whether or not we could see more new features in the near future. So what does this all mean for our understanding of Yellowstone's future? Well, ultimately, the discovery of these new features is a good thing. Remember, the reason scientists monitor Yellowstone so closely is because it's a supervolcano. If it were to erupt, it would be devastating for the surrounding area. Thankfully, these new features aren't indicative of an imminent eruption, but rather show us that there's still lots of movement happening beneath the surface. While it's normal for magma to move around under the surface, if it were to suddenly stop, that would be a cause for concern. That's because magma chambers often refill after erupting, and if the magma were to stop moving altogether, it could be a sign that the magma chamber was refilling in preparation for another eruption. But luckily, this doesn't seem to be the case, and instead, it seems like we'll just have to wait until 2047 to see what the next aerial survey reveals about Yellowstone's ever-changing landscape. And I know I just got done talking about how scientists are using historical maps to track changes in the landscape, but to do my job, I need to use modern tools. That's why I'm very excited to announce this month's sponsor, Freeletics. I love learning about nutrition and working out, but I'm definitely not an expert. And that's why I'm very excited to announce that Freeletics is the perfect solution. Whether you want to lose weight, gain muscle, improve your overall health, or simply feel more energetic, Freeletics has a program for you. Their AI coaches will create a personalized plan based on your preferences, goals, and dietary needs. I've tried it myself, and it's incredibly easy to follow. After answering a few questions about myself, I received a custom meal plan and workout routine that's designed to help me reach my goals. They also offer additional resources like recipe books and guides to help keep you on track. The best part is that Freeletics is designed to fit your busy schedule. You can choose your meals and workouts based on your availability and dietary restrictions. So even if you're limited on time or have specific dietary needs, Freeletics can still help you achieve your goals. Thanks for watching and learning with me. If you want to keep exploring the amazing science that happens all around us, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos. And if you want to learn even more about Yellowstone National Park, check out my video on the bizarre prehistoric creature whose bones were found there. I'll see you next time.